I've been driving trucks for going on 25 years now, mostly long hauls up and down the East Coast. But there's one run I used to do regular, like clockwork, out of Knoxville, Tennessee, headed to Roanoke, Virginia, with whatever load the dispatcher threw my way. Furniture, produce, pallets of drywall, didn't matter. Point was getting it there on time. Back in the day, before all the interstates got widened and the GPS got so smart, I'd take the old back roads through the Blue Ridge when I-81 turned into a parking lot. Folks who don't drive big rigs don't understand how much time you can shave off by knowing those shortcuts. Narrow, two-lane blacktop that twists through the mountains like a snake with a grudge. Dark, quiet, hardly another soul after sunset. I liked it that way. Still do, mostly. It was July of 2009, one of those nights where the humidity hangs so heavy you feel like you're breathing soup. The AC in my old Freightliner was barely keeping up, blowing lukewarm air that smelled faintly of diesel and old coffee. I'd left Knoxville around 9 that evening, figuring I'd roll straight through till morning. Load wasn't heavy, just some boxed appliances, so I was making good time. Radio was playing low, some scratchy classic country station fading in and out between the ridges. I remember the moon was nearly full, hanging low and orange over the treetops, turning the fog in the hollows the color of weak tea. I was deep into the twisties, somewhere past Fancy Gap, I think, though the signs get sparse out there, when my headlights caught him standing on the shoulder. Just a shape at first, then clearer. A man, barefoot, no shirt, jeans torn at the knees. One arm hanging loose at his side, the other raised with his thumb out. He wasn't waving it frantic like most hitchhikers. He was just holding it steady, like he already knew I was going to stop. That should have been my first warning. But it was hot, I was half asleep, and truckers have a code about picking folks up sometimes, especially out in the middle of nowhere. You don't leave a man stranded if you can help it. I eased off the throttle and pulled onto the gravel shoulder, air brakes hissing like an old dog settling down. He didn't move until the rig was almost stopped, then he walked slow toward the passenger door. I reached over and popped the lock. He climbed in without a word, bringing with him a smell I couldn't place right away. Wet earth after rain, wood smoke, and something sharper underneath, like crushed leaves left too long in a jar. His skin was pale in the dashboard glow, ribs showing a little too clear, hair dark and tangled down past his shoulders. Didn't look like he'd eaten proper in weeks, but his eyes were sharp, almost black. I waited for him to say something, where he was headed, thanks for the ride, anything, but he just settled into the seat and stared straight ahead through the windshield. I shifted back into gear and eased us onto the road. "Headed far?" I finally asked, keeping my voice easy. He didn't answer right away, just watched the yellow line sliding under the headlights. Then, soft as wind in the pines, he said, "Far enough." I nodded like that made sense and let the silence stretch. Some riders talk your ear off, others don't say a word the whole way. I figured he was the second kind. The road curved sharp ahead, one of those blind switchbacks where the mountain drops straight off into nothing on the right. I downshifted early, knowing it by heart. "Sharp left coming up," he said, still looking forward, half a mile. I glanced over at him. I hadn't said anything about the turn, hadn't even touched the brakes yet, but he was right, exactly half a mile if you're counting like I do. I took the curve careful, the trailer swaying a little on the wet pavement. We rode quiet again for a few minutes, then another bend coming, this one with a guardrail that's more suggestion than protection. "Watch the drop-off after the bridge," he murmured. My hands tightened on the wheel. That bridge was still 2 miles ahead, hitting around the next ridge. There's a spot right after where the shoulder crumbles away and it's a long fall if you drift. Nobody knows that unless they've driven it. I swallowed and kept my speed steady. "How'd you know about that bridge?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He turned his head then, slow, and looked at me for the first time. There was a faint smile on his face, not friendly exactly, more like someone remembering an old joke. "I've ridden this road with a lot of drivers," he said. The word sat heavy in the cab. I didn't like how he said ridden, past tense, like he wasn't doing it right now, like all those other rides were finished business. I turned the radio up a notch just to have something else in the air. He didn't seem to mind. Every few miles he'd speak again, quiet but clear, naming the next hazard before I saw it. Slow for the deer crossing. Hairpin right, loose gravel. Watch the low branch over the lane. Every single one spot on. After a while I stopped asking how he knew. Just listened and drove. The night wore on. The moon climbed higher, turning silver, washing the trees pale. Fog started drifting across the road in patches, thick enough that I had to flick the high beams down. He never shifted in his seat, never looked tired, just watched the road like he was reading something written in the dock. Around 3 in the morning, we came down out of the worst of the mountains into a long valley stretch. I was starting to feel the weight of the hours, eyes burning a little. Figured I'd drop him wherever he wanted and find a pull-off to catch a couple hours sleep. "You got a name?" I asked. He was quiet so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Folks used to call me Jonah." "Used to?" He smiled again, same faint curve. "Long time ago."
I didn't press it. We passed a faded sign for a little crossroads town coming up. Gas station, diner, maybe a motel if you were lucky. I figured that's where he'd get out. But when we rolled past the exit, he didn't say anything, didn't move, just kept staring ahead. "This the place?" I asked. He shook his head, slow, still a ways yet. I frowned but kept driving. The road climbed again, narrower now, trees crowding close on both sides. I started thinking about how long he'd been in the cab, 4 hours, 5 hours? And not once had he asked for water or a smoke or anything. Not once had he looked in the side mirror or out the window at the scenery sliding by. Just forward, always forward. The sky in the east started going gray, the first hint at dawn. Birds were beginning to call in the woods. I felt the night loosening its grip a little. That's when I noticed the smell again, wet leaves and smoke, stronger now, like he'd brought the forest inside with him. I glanced over to ask if he wanted coffee at the next stop. The seat was empty. I damn near stood on the brakes. The rig fishtailed before I caught it, pulling hard onto the shoulder. Hard hammer, and I looked around the cab. Door still locked from the inside. I always lock it after someone gets in. Windows up tight against the humidity. Sleeper curtain pulled back. Bunk empty. Nothing. No sign he'd ever been there except that smell hanging thick in the air. I sat there a minute, engine idling, staring at the empty seat. Then I got out and walked all the way around the truck, checking the steps, the catwalk, under the trailer. No footprints in the dew-wet gravel. No sign anyone had climbed down. The sun was coming up proper now, pink light filtering through the trees. I climbed back in, hands shaking a little, and drove till I hit the little diner just outside Floyd, place called the Pine View, been there forever. I needed coffee and something to settle my nerves. The waitress was a woman in her 50s, hair teased high, name tag said Darlene. I slid into a booth and ordered black coffee, eggs, whatever. When she brought it, I couldn't help myself. "You ever hear stories about a hitchhiker out on the back roads?" I asked. "Young fella, barefoot, long hair?" She froze with the coffee pot in her hand. Color drained right out of her face. "Honey," she said, quiet, looking around like someone might dare. "You're the third trucker this summer who sat right there and described that same man." I felt the cold crawl up my spine. "What happened to the other two?" I asked. She set the pot down careful. "One of them stopped coming through altogether. The other, well, they find his rig wrapped around a tree down near Bent Mountain. No skid marks, like he just let it go off the edge. I didn't eat much after that, paid and left quick. Haven't taken that shortcut since, not once in all the years after. I stick to the interstate now, even when it's bumper to bumper. Cost me time, cost me fuel, but I don't mind. Sometimes late at night when I'm running empty through the mountains, I'll catch a whiff of wet leaves and smoke in the cab, just for a second, and I'll hear that soft voice in my head, clear as anything. Sharp left coming up. I always take the turn careful."
I've been over the road for damn near 30 years now, mostly regional runs through the southeast, but every summer I'd pick up a few loads out of the sawmills around Boone, North Carolina. Lumber, plywood, whatever they stacked on the flatbed. Paid good, and the back roads up there shaved hours off the trip south. Most folks wouldn't take those logging roads at night. Narrow, washed out in places, no cell signal for miles, but I knew them like the veins on the back of my hand. Or thought I did. It was mid-August 2009, one of those nights where the air felt thick enough to ring out. Heat lightning had been flickering on the horizon since dusk, silent flashes turning the ridges purple and white every few minutes. No rain, just that heavy, sticky warmth that makes your shirt cling to your back. I'd loaded up at the mill just outside Boone around 8, 40,000 pounds of fresh-cut pine strapped down tight. Dispatcher wanted it in Charlotte by morning, so I skipped the interstate and took the old logging trace that cuts through the Pisgah. Paved once maybe, but mostly gravel and tar patches now, winding deep into the national forest, where the only company is tall timber and the occasional black bear. The cab of my Peterbilt was warm even with the windows cracked. Fan blowing, radio tuned low to whatever station I could pull in between the mountains, mostly static with snippets of gospel or old country bleeding through. I kept the CB on Channel 19, the trucker channel, out of habit. You never know when somebody might warn you about state police or a wreck ahead. That night it was quiet at first, just the usual chatter from boys running I-40, somebody complaining about fuel prices, another asking if anybody had eyes on a four-wheeler doing 80 and a 60. Normal stuff, comforting in its way. I'd been rolling maybe an hour when the chatter started fading. One voice dropped out mid-sentence, then another. Pretty soon the whole band was nothing but soft hiss, like waves on a far-off shore. Happens sometimes in the mountains. Ridges block the signal. I reached to switch to Channel 9 for emergencies, but before I could twist the knob, a voice cut clean through the static. A woman. Soft, calm, almost gentle, like someone talking in church. "Breaker 19, eastbound on the Boone Trace. You've got a hazard coming up at mile 28. Slow it down." I glanced at my trip log. I was just passing mile 26. No mile markers out here really, just old painted numbers on trees every few miles, half worn off. I keyed the mic. "Appreciate the eyes, good buddy. Who's this?" Silence. Just the low crackle. I figured she'd stepped off the mic for a second. Kept driving, easing off the throttle a touch anyway. You listen when somebody warns you on a road like that. A minute later she came back, same steady voice. "Watch your right side after the next switchback. Big pine down across the lane." Heat lightning flashed again, lighting up the treetops like daylight for a heartbeat.
I saw the curve coming, sharp right, then left, dropping into a hollow. I downshifted early, jake brake rumbling low. Sure enough, as I rounded the second bend, there it was. A huge pine snapped off halfway up, laid clean across the road. Fresh break, splinters still pale, needles green. Must have come down in the last hour. No way I'd have seen it in time at full speed. I stopped 20 feet short, hazards blinking, and sat there staring, heart thumping a little harder than I'd admit. I grabbed the mic again. "Whoever you are, you just saved my ass, much obliged. Where are you at? You got a tower up here?" Nothing for a long stretch, just static breathing in the speaker. Then softer than before. "Keep it under 40 through the narrows, washout ahead." I looked down the road, black as pitch beyond my headlights. I eased forward, chains rattling over the fallen pine as I crawled across the trunk. Once clear, I sped up a hair, but not much. She was right again 5 miles later. A covert had washed half away, leaving a jagged drop on the shoulder. I hugged the inside of the curve and rolled past slow. After that, I kept waiting for her to say more. Figured she was some local with a base station up on one of the ridges, scanner on, helping drivers at. Happens more than you'd think in those parts. I tried a few more times to raise her. "Eastbound lumber hauler, lady with the heads up, you got a call sign? I owe you a coffee next time I'm through Boone." Dead air. The lightning kept flickering, closer now, but still no rain. The smell of pine sap was thick from the downed tree, mixing with the hot diesel scent from my stacks. I was starting to relax again, thinking maybe she'd gone to bed or lost power, when the static parted once more. "You're clear to the creek bridge now. After that, mind the fog." I crossed the old wooden bridge a minute later, planks thumping under the tires, and sure enough, fog started rolling in thick from the valley bottom. Visibility dropped to 50 feet. I flipped on my fog lights and slowed to 35. I keyed the mic one last time, half joking. "You reading my mind now? Where you hiding that crystal ball?" Long pause, then soft, almost sad. "You already owe me, Daryl." I damn near dropped the microphone. "My name's not Daryl. Haven't answered to it since I was 12 years old and my daddy passed. He was the only one who ever called me that, Little Daryl, after his own father. Mama switched to my middle name, Ray, the day we buried him. Nobody in my adult life, wife, kids, dispatcher, not even my oldest driving buddy, knows I was ever Daryl to anyone." The cab felt colder all of a sudden, even with the heat still hanging heavy outside. I stared at the radio like it might bite. "Who is this?" I asked, voice lower than I meant. Nothing, just the soft rush of static. I reached over and twisted the power knob hard, shutting the whole unit off. Screen went dark. Silence filled the cab except for the engine and tires on gravel. I rolled the windows up tight, even though it made the heat worse. Didn't want to hear anything else tonight. The rest of the run felt longer than it should. Fog stayed thick till I hit the valley outside Lenore, then burned off quick as the moon set. I delivered the load at dawn, signed the bills, and grabbed a motel room instead of deadheading back. Slept most of the day with the TV on loud. When I finally rolled north again that evening, I left the CB off. Haven't turned it to channel 19 since, not once in all these years. I'll scan weather or emergency channels sometimes, but never the main trucker band. Too many nights I've wondered who she was. A prank? Somebody who knew my daddy back in the day? Or something else that rides those mountain roads when the heat lightning flashes and the fog rolls in? Every August, when the air gets that same thick feel and the lightning dances silent on the ridges, I catch myself listening anyway. Windows up, radio dead, but listening all the same. Sometimes, just for a second, I think I hear a soft voice under the engine noise, calm, familiar, warning me about something up ahead. I always slow down.
I've been hauling freight through the mountains for most of my adult life, ever since I got my CDL at 19 and never looked back. There's something about those long nights on the Blue Ridge Parkway that settles into your bones. Quiet stretches, where the only sound is your own engine and the wind rushing past. Stars so thick overhead you feel like you could reach up and grab a handful. Most folks think trucking's lonely work, but I never minded it much. Gives a man time to think, or not think, depending on what kind of night it is. This particular run was back in the summer of 2011, July I think. One of those humid spells where the air just hangs on you like a wet blanket. I was running empty southbound out of Roanoke, headed down toward Cherokee to pick up a load of furniture blanks at a little mill outside the reservation. Dispatcher had me on the parkway instead of the interstate, said traffic was murder on I-40 and the parkway would be clear this late. He wasn't wrong. I'd left Roanoke around midnight, windows down because the AC had been acting up, letting that thick mountain air roll through the cab. Crickets loud in the trees, occasional owl hoot drifting across the ridges. I had the radio off. Sometimes I do that when I want the quiet, and was just watching the white stripes slide under the headlights, keeping a steady 60 where the road allowed. It was right around 2 in the morning, coming down off one of the higher sections near Water Rock Knob, when I first noticed the lights in my mirrors. Just a faint glow at first, way back, like someone running without their trailers lit. I didn't think much of it. A lot of local boys haul logs on these roads, and some of them are lax about marking their loads proper. As the minutes passed, though, the glow got closer. Steady. Not gaining fast, not falling back. I could make out the shape then. An older cab over Kenworth, dark green maybe, pulling a full load of logs. No reflector tape glowing, no marker lights on the trailer at all. Just the dim headlights and that soft orange from the cab. I figured the driver was saving his battery or something. The road straightened for a bit, and he settled in behind me, maybe 3 truck lengths back. Close enough to see, far enough to be polite. I kept my speed, but after a couple miles, I started feeling that little prickle on the back of my neck. He wasn't passing. On a straight like that, loaded or not, he could have rolled right by if he wanted. Instead, he just hung there, matching me turn for turn as the parkway started twisting again. I sped up a touch, 65, 68. He matched it smooth. Eased back down to 55 on a curve. He did the same, like we were hooked together by an invisible chain. I told myself it was nothing, probably some old-timer playing games to stay awake, or maybe he was drafting to save fuel. Happens sometimes. But the longer it went on, the more it gnawed at me. 10 miles, 15, still there. No CB chatter about him, no headlights coming the other way to light him up so I could see the driver. Just that steady glow in the mirrors, flickering every time we rounded a bend and the trees blocked the moonlight. Finally, I saw a wide gravel pull-off coming up, one of those scenic overlooks that's empty this time of night. I flipped my blinker out of habit, even though there wasn't a soul to see it, and eased onto the shoulder, gravel crunching loud under the tires. I came to a full stop, hazards blinking, and waited. Figured he'd blow past me then, maybe give a little horn toot for courtesy. Instead, I watched in the mirror as he slowed, turned in behind me, and rolled to a stop maybe 50 yards back. His engine noise died away, deep rumble cutting off sudden, and his lights dimmed to parking mode. Just that faint cab glow left. I sat there a good 5 minutes, engine idling, watching. Nobody got out. No door opening, no silhouette climbing down to stretch or take a leak or anything. Just the dark shape of the truck sitting quiet behind me, logs stacked high like black bones against the trees. The crickets seemed louder all of a sudden, and I could hear my own breathing in the cab. I grabbed the CB mic, keyed it a couple times. Southbound empty on the parkway. You on my donkey, driver? You need anything? Static. Then the usual distant chatter from boys way down on the interstate, but nothing close. No answer from him. Copy? You broke down or just taking a break? Still nothing. I waited another minute, then eased back onto the pavement slow, watching the mirrors. The second I straightened out, his parking lights brightened. Engine caught with a cough, and he pulled out behind me again. Same distance, same speed. That's when the unease really settled in my gut, heavy as a bad meal. This wasn't drafting or playing around anymore. I'd given him every chance to pass or pull off, and he just followed. The parkway isn't like a regular highway. You can't just turn around easy. There's stone walls and drop-offs and no shoulders half the time. I kept driving, but now I was watching the mirrors more than the road ahead. We went on like that for damn near an hour, down through the tunnels carved into the mountainside, past overlooks where the valley drops away into nothing, through sections where the rhododendrons grow so thick they brush the sides of the trailer. Every curve, every straight, he stayed right there. I tried the CB a few more times, different channels even, asking if anybody had eyes on a log hauler running dark. Nothing useful came back. One guy laughed and said maybe it was a ghost truck, but I wasn't in the mood. Finally, the road opened up into one of those long valley straights, maybe 3 miles of fairly level ground before it climbs again toward Cherokee. My phone picked up a faint signal, 2 bars, enough to text or call if I was careful. I kept one hand on the wheel and thumbed a quick message to my buddy Earl, who lives just outside Silva and drives for the same outfit. He's usually up late. You running tonight? Got a log truck been tailing me since Water Rock. Won't pass, won't answer. He texted back quick. Nah man, home tonight. Mill's shut down all week, equipment breakdown. Ain't no logs moving till Friday. I read it twice, stomach dropping, then a third time just to be sure. I eased off the throttle a little, watching the mirrors close. Told myself maybe Earl was wrong, or maybe this driver was from a different mill farther north. But deep down I knew better. That mill supplies half the log haulers on this stretch, and when they're down, the roads go quiet. The straight section was ending, road starting to curve again toward the final descent into Cherokee. I glanced up one more time, expecting to see that faint cab glow still hanging back. The mirrors were empty. Black pavement stretching behind me, moonlight silver on the stripes, trees crowding close on both sides. No taillights fading in the distance, no engine sound carrying on the wind, no fresh gravel dust hanging in the air, just nothing. I hit the brakes harder than I meant to, tires chirping, and pulled onto the narrow shoulder. Sat there with the engine ticking as it cooled, staring into the mirrors like an idiot.
drove slow for the next mile, watching for any sign he'd turned off somewhere. There wasn't a single side road big enough for a loaded rig the whole way down. When I finally rolled into Cherokee and parked at the travel plaza to fuel up, the lot was near empty, just a couple reefers idling and one local car. I walked the whole perimeter anyway, checking between the pumps and around back where the locals sometimes park. No log truck, no tire tracks in the soft dirt, nothing. I still think about it on nights when the humidity climbs and the moon hangs low over the ridges. I'll be running the parkway, can't always avoid it, and I'll catch myself watching the mirrors longer than I should, waiting for that faint glow to appear way back in the dark, wondering if he's still out there, running empty roads with a load that never gets delivered. Or maybe he only shows up when there's supposed to be no one else around. I never heard another driver mention him, never saw him again myself, but I don't run those stretches quite as fast anymore, and when the road's empty behind me for too long, I start to feel that same prickle on my neck, like maybe I'm the one being followed now.
I've spent more nights parked in the middle of nowhere than I can count, pulling over wherever there's enough shoulder to keep the rig straight and the law off my back. There's a rhythm to it. Find a quiet spot, shut down the engine, let the ticks and creaks settle while the coffee goes cold in the thermos. Most places blur together after a while, but there's one pull-off I'll never forget. A wide gravel patch deep in the Monongahela National Forest in West Virginia, just off a winding stretch of Route 33. Truckers call it the Laurel Spot, on account of the thick rhododendron that crowds right up to the edge. No signs, no facilities, just a half moon of gravel big enough for 2 or 3 rigs if you park tight. Locals don't come there, and the rangers hardly ever patrol after dark. It's one of those places you only learn about from another driver over coffee at a fuel island. It was the middle of July 2014, one of the hottest spells I can remember. I'd been running produce out of Florida, watermelons and tomatoes stacked high in a reefer, and was headed north toward Pittsburgh with a deadline breathing down my neck. By the time I hit the West Virginia line, the sun had cooked me all day, even with the AC on full blast, and I was starting to nod off behind the wheel. I knew if I didn't stop soon, I'd end up in a ditch. The Laurel Spot came up right when I needed it, around midnight. Moon was full and bright, hanging over the treetops like a spotlight, turning everything silver and black. Crickets were going full tilt, that loud rising hum that fills the mountains in summer. No other trucks there, just me in the woods. I eased in slow, gravel popping under the tires, and backed the trailer up against the tree line so I could pull straight out come morning. Killed the engine and sat for a minute listening to the quiet settle in. The reefer unit kicked on with its low hum, keeping the load cold, but otherwise it was peaceful. Smell of warm pine and damp earth drifted in through the open windows. I drank the last of my coffee, brushed my teeth at the sink, and climbed into the sleeper. Didn't even bother pulling the curtains all the way. Moonlight was pouring in anyway. I was out quick, dead tired like only 14 hours on the road can make you. I don't know how long I slept, 2 hours, maybe 3, before something brought me up out of it. Not a loud noise, nothing dramatic, just a soft thump overhead, right above the bunk, like a foot coming down careful on the roof of the cab. I lay there in the dark, eyes open, waiting to see if it was my imagination. The reefer hummed, crickets screamed outside, but inside the sleeper everything felt still. Then it came again, another thump, a little farther back, toward the trailer. Slow, deliberate. Bare skin on aluminum, I thought, because there wasn't the sharp click of a boot heel, just a muted, fleshy sound. I didn't move, told myself it was a branch falling, or maybe a coon climbing up from the trees to see what it could steal. Happened sometimes. But the thumps kept coming, steady as a heartbeat, one after another, walking the length of the roof from the windshield all the way back over the reefer, then turning and coming forward again, back and forth, never hurried, never pausing long. I could feel the faint vibration through the mattress each time weight shifted overhead. My skin prickled, and I felt that cold pool start in my stomach, the kind you get when you know you're not alone anymore. After maybe 10 minutes, I couldn't stand it. I reached quiet for the mag light I keep clipped beside the bunk, thumbed it on low, and eased the curtain back just enough to see out the driver's window. Moonlight washed everything bright, no shadows to hide in. The catwalk was empty. The steps were empty. Ground all around looked undisturbed, gravel smooth except for my own tire tracks. I cracked the door slow, trying not to let the hinges squeak, and shone the light up toward the roof. Nothing moved. No eyes reflecting back. Just the clean aluminum gleaming under the moon, a little dusty from the road. I was about to close the door when the thump came again, directly above me this time, heavy enough to rock the cab a hair. I froze, light aimed straight up, and that's when I saw them, wet footprints appearing one after another on the roof, dark against the silver metal. Bare feet, narrow, long toes, pressing down just enough to leave a damp print before lifting.
They moved in a straight line from the front edge toward the back, slow and measured, like whoever it was knew exactly where they were going. I followed the beam as far as it would reach, but the prints just kept coming, step after step, until they disappeared over the curve of the trailer. Then, after a pause, they started back the other way. I don't know how long I stood there with the door half open, light shaking in my hand. The footprints weren't deep, just surface moisture, like someone had walked out of a creek and climbed straight up the side of my truck with me hearing a thing. No water dripping down the sides, no scuffs on the paint, no leaves or dirt tracked along, just those clean, wet prints going back and back and back. And the worst part, the prints always stopped right above my bunk when they reached the cab again, like they were standing there looking down through the metal at where I slept. I pulled the door shut quiet and locked it, heart hammering so loud I was sure whatever was up there could hear it. Sat on the edge of the bunk with the light in my lap, listening. The walking didn't stop. If anything, it got slower, more deliberate, as if it knew I was awake now and paying attention. Every few minutes a print would appear in the moonlight I could see through the windshield, dark shape pressing down, then gone. I thought about starting the engine and getting the hell out, but part of me was afraid any sudden move would make things worse. You hear stories from other drivers, things that follow if you run, things that don't like loud noise. I don't know if I believed them then, but I do now. The night dragged. I didn't sleep again, just sat there listening to the footsteps pace overhead, watching the moon crawl across the sky. Crickets never let up, and every now and then an owl would call from the ridge, long and mournful. Around 4:30, the walking finally stopped. No fading away, no last thump, just silence. I waited another half hour, then cracked the door again and climbed out with the flashlight. Dawn was starting to gray the edges of the trees, but the moon still hung bright enough to see. The footprints were still there, dozens of them, overlapping in places, all along the roof of the cab and the full length of the reefer, wet at first but already drying at the edges, bare, narrow, longer than my own foot but thin, like a woman's or maybe a teenager's. They went from the front edge straight back to the rear doors, then turned and came forward again, over and over. But here's what turned my blood cold. Every single track faced forward. Not one print showed a heel first, not one print showed someone turning around, just one direction, as if whatever made them never needed to pivot, just glided backward when it wanted to reverse. I stood there in the cool morning air, staring up them until the sun came full over the ridge and baked the last of the moisture away. The prints faded to faint outlines in the dust, but you could still see the pattern clear enough. I took pictures with my old flip phone, grainy, but there if anyone ever asked. Then I climbed back in, started the engine, and drove till I hit the truck stop outside Elkins. Didn't stop again until I was out of the mountains altogether. I still run produce north in summer, still take those back roads when the interstates clog, but I never park at the Laurel spot anymore. I'll drive an extra hour if I have to, find a lighted lot or a rest area with other trucks around. Some nights when the moon is full and the crickets are loud, I'll wake up sudden in the sleeper with my heart racing, listening for that soft thump overhead. Most times there's nothing, but every once in a while, when I'm parked somewhere deep in the woods, I'll step out in the morning and check the roof anyway. The dust is always clean. No prints at all.
I've been behind the wheel of a big rig for going on 28 years now, mostly running the southeastern routes, where the mountains rise up sudden and the nights can turn on you without warning. There's a comfort in the routine. Load up, roll out, deliver, repeat. But every driver knows there are stretches of road that feel different, places where the dark presses a little closer and the quiet gets too heavy. One of those places sits just north of Asheville, North Carolina, on Old Highway 19, a rest area that used to be open round the clock before the state shut it down for good. It was August 2012, the kind of heat that doesn't let up even after the sun drops behind the ridges. I'd just dropped a load of furniture in Asheville and was running empty back toward Knoxville, bobtail with nothing dragging behind me but the memory of a long day. The AC in my old International had quit sometime around Georgia, so I was rolling with the windows down, letting the thick night air slap me awake. Sweat stuck my shirt to the seat, and my eyes burned from too many hours staring at white lines. All I could think about was coffee, strong, black, and soon. My paper atlas showed a rest area coming up in 10 miles, one of those older ones with vending machines and real bathrooms, marked as 24-hour on the page. I'd stopped there plenty of times over the years, knew it had decent lighting and enough room for a few trucks to park without crowding. I saw the sign first, faded green reflector letters catching my headlights, rest area 1 mile. Then the exit ramp curving gentle off the highway. But as I eased down the grade, something felt off. No glow ahead like there should have been, no sodium lights washing the trees orange, just black dark swallowing the ramp.
I figured maybe a power outage, or the state had finally turned the lights off to save money. When I made the turn into the lot, my headlights swept across the entrance, and I saw why it was dark. Chain link gates pulled across the drive, heavy chain and padlock glinting new in the beams. Windows on the cinder block building boarded over with fresh plywood, no gaps. A big sign bolted to the gate read "Closed for repairs" in official lettering. I sat there idling for a minute, disappointed but not surprised. Things closed down all the time. Budget cuts, vandalism, whatever. My Atlas was a couple years old, probably happened since the last printing. I could have kept rolling, but I was bone tired and the lot was empty, gates or no gates. There was plenty of room on the approach to park without blocking anything, and I figured an hour's nap wouldn't hurt anybody. I pulled in slow, tires crunching over broken glass and weeds pushing through the cracked pavement, and nosed the tractor up near the gate so I could pull straight out later. Killed the lights, but left the engine running a bit to charge the batteries. The quiet hit different once the engine settled. No highway noise carrying over, just crickets and tree frogs loud in the woods that crowded close on three sides. Moon was only a sliver that night, barely enough to see shapes. I grabbed my thermos, empty of course, and stepped out to stretch my legs. The air smelled like hot tar and honeysuckle, thick enough to taste. I walked the front of the truck, rolling my shoulders, then figured I'd take a leak and have a look around before climbing into the bunk. That's when I noticed the tire tracks. They started just past the gate, deep duels pressed into the soft dirt where rain had washed out the gravel. Fresh, edges sharp, no dust settled in the treads yet. Looked like another semi had come in recently, heavy enough to sink good. I followed them with my flashlight, curious. The tracks went straight through where the gate should have blocked, like someone had opened it and closed it again behind them. Past the chain link, they continued across the main lot, around the side of the boarded building, and toward the back where the grass grew tall. I don't know why I kept following. Tiredness makes you stupid sometimes. Or maybe it was just the strangeness of seeing fresh tracks in a place that was supposed to be shut tight. The beam of my light bounced over broken picnic tables and overflowing trash barrels as I rounded the corner. The tracks stayed deep and straight, no wandering, like the driver knew exactly where he was going. They led right up to the back wall of the building. Cinder block painted that ugly institutional green, and then just stopped. No turnaround, no backing marks, no second set coming out. Just ended dead against the wall, tread pattern pressed clear in the dirt, like the truck had driven straight into solid block and vanished. I stood there shining the light on those tracks longer than I should have, trying to make sense of it. No truck in sight, no driver walking away, nothing. Just tall weeds and the dark wall with its plywood-covered windows. A little breeze stirred the leaves overhead, and I felt the hairs on my arms stand up. Then I heard it, low, steady, unmistakable. A diesel engine idling. Not outside, not nearby. Inside the building. Muffled through the walls, but close enough that I could feel the faint vibration in the ground. Slow, even rumble, like someone had parked a rig in there and left it running. I backed up a step, light swinging wild. The building wasn't big enough to hold a semi, maybe 30 feet deep at most. No overhead doors on this side, no loading dock, nothing. Just that soft idling coming from somewhere it shouldn't. I thought about calling out, asking if somebody needed help, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I stood frozen, listening. The idle didn't change, didn't rev, didn't miss, just kept that steady heartbeat rhythm. And underneath it, almost too faint to catch, something else. A low creak, like weight shifting on springs. Once, twice. I don't remember deciding to leave. 1 second I was standing there. Next I was walking fast back around the building, boots loud on the gravel. Didn't run, didn't want to run, but moved quick enough my breath came short. Climbed into the cab, locked the doors out of habit, and fired the engine. Sat there a minute with my hands on the wheel, telling myself I'd imagined it. Old building settling, maybe a generator meant for construction or something, but I knew better. There was no construction equipment, no trailers, no lights anywhere. I eased back onto the approach ramp, headlights cutting across the gate as I turned. That's when I saw the sign again, big white board with black letters, closed for repairs. But someone had been there since the state put it up. Fresh red spray paint, still dripping a little at the edges, scrawled big across the bottom in shaky capitals. Still open for some. I hit the highway doing 70 before I even realized I'd floored it. Didn't slow down till I reached the truck stop outside Canton. Bright lights and other rigs and people moving around. Parked under the floodlights and sat in the cab till sunrise, doors locked, eyes on the mirrors. I looked up that rest area later, when I had signal again. State shut it permanent in 2010 after too many break-ins and reports of transients living in the woods nearby. No plans to reopen, no repairs scheduled. Been chained shut ever since. I still drive that stretch sometimes, never at night if I can help it. And when I pass the exit ramp, I keep my eyes straight ahead. But some nights, when the air's thick and the moon's thin, I'll catch a glimpse of fresh tire tracks in the dirt just visible from the highway. Deep duels leading in.
none coming out, and I'll wonder if the engine's still idling in there, waiting to see who pulls in next.
I've been hauling coal and timber up and down the back roads of Southwest Virginia for most of my life, ever since I got out of high school and figured the mines weren't for me. There's money in moving what comes out of them, and I like the solitude of those narrow mountain traces, roads barely wide enough for a loaded truck, winding through hollers where the sun hardly reaches the pavement some days. I knew every curve, every washout, every place where the shoulder drops off into nothing, or at least I thought I did. It was July 2007, one of the hottest summers on record, the kind where the heat doesn't break at night, just settles heavier, like the mountains themselves are breathing it down on you. I'd picked up a load of oak lumber in Norton that afternoon and was running it over to a mill outside Bristol. Took the old back way through Clintwood to save time, Route 83 to a county road that cuts through the Jefferson National Forest. Folks in town call it the Pine Trace because the pines grow so thick along it you can't see 10 feet into the woods most places. No houses for 20 miles in either direction, no cell signal, just the road and the dark. My old Mac started acting up around 11 that night, transmission winding on the climbs, slipping bad when I downshift. I babied it as long as I could, but just past midnight, coming down a long grade into a deep hollow, it gave out altogether. Dropped out of gear with a grinding clunk and wouldn't catch again. I coasted to the widest spot I could find, a gravel pull-off barely big enough for the truck and trailer, and set the brakes. Sat there a minute with the engine ticking as it cooled, cursing under my breath. Called the breakdown number on the satellite phone I kept for places like this. Dispatcher said the nearest tow with a heavy wrecker was 3 hours out, maybe 4. Nothing I could do but wait. The heat inside the cab was stifling, even with the windows down. Air felt thick as syrup, and the crickets were screaming in the trees. I grabbed a bottle of water from the cooler, stepped out to stretch, and leaned against the fender. Moon was 3/4 full, filtering down through the pine branches and silver patches. Everything smelled like hot sap and damp earth. Quiet, except for the insects and the occasional pop of cooling metal. I walked a slow circle around the truck, checking the tires, shining my flashlight under the frame to see if anything obvious had busted loose. Nothing I could fix out here with the tools I carried. I was standing at the rear of the trailer, wiping sweat off my neck, when I heard it the first time. Faint, almost lost under the crickets. Singing. Children's voices, high and clear, coming from somewhere up in the trees. I stopped moving, listening hard. It was Ring Around the Rosie, that old nursery rhyme every kid knows. Slow, drawn out, the way children sing when they're playing a game and not in any hurry. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies. Soft, like it was drifting down from the branches overhead. I looked up, shining the light into the pines. Branches thick as a wall, swaying gently in the little breeze there was. No movement, no eyes catching the beam, just dark needles and moonlight. The singing kept going, same verse repeating, voices overlapping a little like a round. Couldn't tell how many, 3, 4, maybe more. I swept the light left and right along the tree line. Nothing, no cabins, no clearings, no reason for kids to be out here at midnight. The light seemed to bother them. The moment the beam crossed the spot where the sound was strongest, the singing stopped dead. Silence rushed in so sudden my ears rang. Crickets kept going, but the voices were gone. I lowered the light, waiting. After maybe 10 seconds, they started again, fainter now, coming from a different spot farther along the road. Same song, same slow tempo. I told myself it was echoes or something, sound carrying funny in the hollow, maybe teenagers camping illegal, messing around. But the pines were so thick you couldn't pitch a tent without a machete, and there weren't any fire roads nearby. I walked the shoulder a bit, shining the light up into the trees every few steps. Every time the beam hit high, the singing cut off. Every time I pointed it down, it started again, drifting from a new direction. I went back to the truck and climbed into the cab, leaving the windows cracked because the heat was worse with them shut. Locked the doors anyway, habit from running through rougher areas. Sat there with the dome light on low, drinking water, watching the clock crawl. The singing kept up outside, circling slow, first off to the left, then behind the trailer, then over on the right side of the road. Never loud, never hurried. Just that same verse over and over, voices sweet and small like Sunday school children. After a while, it started getting closer. Not much, just enough that I could make out individual voices, a higher one carrying the melody, others coming in on the ashes, ashes. I turned the radio on for company, but all I got was static this far out. Shut it off again.
The singing paused when the static hissed, started again when it went quiet. I began to feel like they were listening for me the same way I was listening for them. Around 2:30 or so, the voices were close enough that I could hear them through the glass, clear as anything, circling the truck now, passing from one side to the other. I kept the flashlight in my hand, but didn't shine it out, didn't want to stop them again, or maybe didn't want to see what might be making the sound. Sweat rolled down my back even though the night air had cooled some. I thought about starting the engine just to have the noise, but the battery was already low from the lights, and I didn't want to risk not being able to call again if I needed. That's when the clearest voice came, right outside my window, no more than a few feet away. A little girl, soft and polite, like she was talking through the screen at church. I froze, every muscle locked. The other voices had gone quiet, leaving just hers hanging in the air. I didn't answer, didn't move. After a long minute, the singing started up again, farther away now, back up in the trees. Same song, same slow round. But every few minutes, that one voice would drift close again, always the same words. "We're waiting for you to come play." I sat there till the sky started going gray in the east, doors locked, windows up despite the heat, flashlight gripped tight in my fist. The singing never stopped entirely, just faded when the birds started waking, until I couldn't tell if it was still there or if the morning noise had covered it. The tow truck finally showed just after sunrise, a big rotator out of Grundy, driver named Curtis who I'd seen around the scales before. He hooked up quick while I stood off to the side, drinking the coffee he'd brought. I didn't say anything about the night at first, just let him work. When he had the truck up on the stinger and we were climbing into his cab, I finally asked, "You ever hear anything strange out on this stretch?" He glanced over, wiping sweat already starting in the morning heat. "Like what?" "Kids singing, up in the trees." His hands tightened on the wheel. He didn't answer right away. "Folks say things," he said finally. "Old church camp used to sit back in there, maybe half a mile off the road. Place called Pine Hollow. Ran summer programs for kids from the Gold Towns. Burned flat in '78. Electrical fire, they said. Happened at night. All camp asleep. No survivors." He paused, eyes on the road. "Some drivers won't stop here after dark. Say they hear singing when they break down." I looked out the window at the pines sliding past, thick and dark even in daylight. "You believe him?" I asked. He shrugged. "I believe something happened here. Whether it's ghosts or just echoes in a man's head when he's tired and alone, I don't know, but I don't park here overnight if I can help it." We didn't talk much the rest of the way into town. I still run those roads when the load calls for it, still take the pine trace sometimes, because it's the fastest way, but I check the transmission extra careful now, and I carry a spare phone battery, and when July rolls around and the nights stay hot, I make sure I'm clear of that hollow before dark. Some nights, when I'm parked somewhere else and the crickets are loud, I'll wake up sudden with that little girl's voice in my head, soft, patient. "We're waiting for you to come play." I always check the locks twice.
I've driven every kind of road there is in these mountains. Interstates, parkways, logging traces barely wide enough for the trailer. But there's one stretch through the George Washington National Forest in Virginia that I've never felt easy on. It's a state route that cuts north-south through the heart of the forest, winding and lonely, the kind of road the GPS sometimes forgets exists. Pines and hardwoods crowd right up to the shoulders, and in places the canopy closes overhead like a tunnel. Folks who live nearby call it the Deep Cut. I used to run it regular when I was dead-heading north out of Roanoke because it shaved a good 40 minutes off the trip if you kept your speed up. It was a night in late June 2013, humid and still, the kind where thunder rumbles far off but no rain ever comes. I dropped my load in Roanoke that afternoon and was running empty toward Stoughton to pick up the next morning. No trailer dragging behind, just the tractor, light and nimble, eating up the miles. I hit the Deep Cut around midnight, windows down because the AC was blowing warm again. Air smelled like wet leaves and distant wood smoke, thick enough to taste. Moon was half full, peeking through the clouds every now and then, throwing silver patches across the blacktop. Radio was nothing but static that far in, so I had it off, just the low rumble of the diesel and the tires singing on the pavement. I knew the route by heart, mile markers every mile, old metal signs bolted to posts, paint faded but readable. I always watched for 52 because that's where the little county road branched off toward the truck stop outside Warm Springs. Easy to miss if you're not paying attention. So when I rolled past marker 47, dented on the bottom corner like always, numbers peeling a little, I noted it in my head. 7 miles to go. I was making good time, maybe 70 where the road allowed, enjoying the empty feel of the bobtail. About 10 minutes later, the next marker came up on the right, catching my headlights.
Same dent, same faded green paint, same 47 staring back at me. I eased off the throttle, frowning. Couldn't be. I'd just passed it. I checked the odometer. 6 miles clicked off since the last one. I laughed a little, short and dry. Told myself I was tired, eyes playing tricks in the dark. Happens when you've been on the road too long. Kept driving. The road twisted through a series of S-curves, climbing a ridge, then dropping into a hollow where fog likes to settle. I stayed alert, sipping cold coffee from the thermos, watching for deer. 20 minutes later, plenty of distance for 5 more markers. Another sign flashed in the lights. 47 again. Same dent low on the left edge, same rust bleeding down from the bolt holes. I slowed way down this time, almost to a crawl, staring as I passed. It was identical. Not just the number, the little details you don't notice unless you're looking close. A scratch across the 4, paint chipped off the top of the 7. I felt a cold prickle crawl up my arms despite the heat. I pulled over right there, hazards blinking, and sat with the engine idling. Grabbed my phone, spotty signal, but the GPS app had logged on earlier and still showed a blue dot moving steady north. According to it, I was well past where 47 should have been, closer to 51 or 52. I'd driven 30 miles since entering the forest, easy. I stared at the screen a long minute, then looked back down the road I'd just come, empty blacktop disappearing into the trees, no marker visible behind me. I told myself it was a prank, somebody swapping signs, or the state reusing old ones. Didn't make much sense, but it was better than the other thoughts trying to creep in. I took a picture of the marker anyway, just to prove to myself later I wasn't losing it. Phone timestamp clear, 12:47 a.m., marker 47 bright in the flash. Then I eased back onto the road, slower now, watching close. The next miles felt longer, trees pressed in tighter, branches scrapping the roof every time the road curved. Fog started drifting across in patches, then at first, then thicker in the low spots. I flipped the fog lights on, yellow beams cutting through the gray. And then, maybe 15 minutes later, there it was again, 47, same post, same dents, same everything. I didn't laugh this time, just pulled past it slow and stopped on the shoulder, heart starting to thump heavy. I sat there a long minute, staring at it in the mirrors. Then I grabbed the big mag light from under the seat and got out. Gravel crunched loud under my boots as I walked back. The marker stood there ordinary as anything, reflecting the flashlight beam. I touched it, metal cool despite the heat night, rust flaking under my fingers. Took another picture, timestamp 1:09 a.m., same marker. I looked down the road ahead, nothing but fog and dark trees. Behind me, the last curve I'd come around hid whatever was back there. I climbed in and drove again, faster now, wanting out of that stretch. The fog thickened, swallowing the shoulders, making the headlights bounce back at me. I kept waiting for 48, 49, anything different. Instead, after what felt like forever, but was probably only 10 more minutes, the beam caught it again. 47, same as before, same as always. This time I stopped dead in the lane, hazards on, and got out with the light. Walked back to where the previous one should have been, maybe half a mile, judging by how long I'd driven. Swept the beam left and right along the shoulder. Nothing, no post, no hole where one had been pulled out, no marker lying in the weeds, just thick brush and pine trunks crowding the edge. I stood there shining the light into the woods, listening. Crickets loud, tree frogs, the low tick of the engine behind me. No birds this late, no wind, just that heavy quiet that settles deep in the forest when something's not right. I don't know how long I stood there, long enough for the fog to crawl around my legs, long enough to feel eyes on me from the dark between the trees. I got back in the truck quick, locked the doors though it felt foolish, and drove. Didn't stop again till I hit the truck stop outside Warm Springs just before dawn. Parked under the lights with the other rigs, finally breathed easy when I saw 62 on the highway sign. I still have those photos on an old phone I keep in a drawer. 4 pictures, 4 different timestamps, all showing the same mile marker 47. Same tents, same rust, same everything. GPS log shows I drove straight through. No loops, no turnarounds. Odometer clicked off the miles like it should. I've asked other drivers about it. Quiet, over coffee when nobody else is listening. A couple older boys nod slow, say they've heard things about the deep cut. Loops that don't show on maps, markers that move. Most just laugh or change the subject. I don't bring it up anymore. I still run north out of Roanoke when the load calls for it, but I take the interstate now, even when it adds an hour. Costs me fuel, costs me time, I don't mind. Some nights when the fog rolls thick and the moon is half hidden behind clouds, I'll dream about that road, driving steady, watching the markers click by, and no matter how far I go, how many miles the odometer turns, the next sign waiting in the headlights is always 47. I always wake up before I reach 52.
I've fueled up at more truck stops than I can count over the years. Big chains with bright lights and hot showers, little independence barely clinging to life out on some forgotten highway. There's a rhythm to it. Pull in, park at the island, swipe the card, let the diesel clatter into the tanks while you stretch your legs and try to shake the road out of your bones. Most nights it's routine, nothing more. But every now and then a place sticks with you, not for the coffee or the food, but for something quieter that settles in your gut and won't leave.
This one was a small independent off Highway 19, high up in the North Carolina mountains near Maggie Valley, a place called Hilltop Fuel, cinder block building, gravel lot, couple of old pumps under a rusted canopy. I'd stopped there a handful of times before because it was open all night and the prices weren't bad. No restaurant, just a little store inside with microwave burritos and stale coffee. The lights were those old buzzing fluorescents that turn everything sickly green and make shadows look deeper than they should. It was July 2015, middle of a hot spell that had the whole southeast sweating through the nights. I'd been running a load of sheetrock down from Virginia and was headed back north empty, figuring to make Knoxville by morning. Pulled in around 2 a.m., lot near deserted, just one other rig idling across the way and a beat-up pickup near the store. Only one island had the lights on, the others dark and chained off. I nosed the Kenworth up to the working pump, killed the engine, and stepped out into the heavy air. Crickets loud in the woods that pressed close on three sides, mountains rising black against the stars. The fluorescent hum filled the quiet, and the smell of diesel mixed with wet pine drifting down from the ridges. I swiped my card, started the pump, and leaned against the fender while the numbers clicked up slow. Took my time, long haul ahead, and my back was stiff from the hours. That's when I noticed her. She came walking out from the shadows near the edge of the lot, slow and steady, like she'd been waiting for the sound of an engine. Barefoot, wearing a thin sundress the color of faded bluebonnets, hair long and dark and hanging wet down her back. Water dripped from the ends, leaving little dark spots on the gravel as she crossed toward the island. In the green light, her skin looked too pale for July, almost translucent, like someone who hadn't seen sun in years. She moved quiet, no hurry, eyes fixed on me the whole way. I straightened up a little, nodded polite the way you do. Truckers see all kinds on the road, folks down on their luck, runaways, locals looking for a ride. She stopped a few feet away, just past the front bumper, and stood there looking up at the cab like she was measuring the distance. "You headed north?" she asked. Voice soft, low, with that slow mountain drawl you hear deeper in the hollers. "Yeah," I said, "up 19 toward I-40, then on to Knoxville." She nodded slow, water still dripping from her hair onto her shoulders. The dress clung damp in places, but she didn't seem cold. "Could use a ride to the next exit," she said. "Soco Gap. Got family waiting." Something about her set the hairs on my neck stirring. Couldn't put a finger on it right away, just a feeling, the way animals sense weather coming. Her eyes were too dark, almost black in the fluorescent wash, and they didn't blink much. Skin pale enough you could see faint blue veins at her throat. Bare feet didn't have a mark on them, no dirt, no cuts, even though the gravel was sharp and scattered with broken glass. I hesitated. I've given rides before, short hops, folks who seem safe enough, but company policy is strict these days. No passengers, no exceptions. Insurance won't cover it if something goes wrong. And something about this woman felt wrong in a way I couldn't name. "Sorry, ma'am," I said, keeping my tone easy. "Company won't let me take riders, liability thing." She didn't answer right away, just stood there, head tilted a little, staring. The pump clicked off behind me, tank full, but I didn't move to pull the nozzle yet. The silence stretched, filled only by the buzz of the lights and the crickets beyond the lot. "I won't be any trouble," she said finally. "Just to the gap." I shook my head again, firmer this time. "Really can't. Wish I could help." Her expression didn't change. No anger, no pleading. Just that steady, dark stare. I turned to finish up, pulling the nozzle and capping the tank, trying to shake the unease. When I glanced back, she was still there, same spot, watching every move. I climbed into the cab, fired the engine, let it rumble warm for a minute. Checked the mirrors, habit before pulling out. She was gone. I looked through the windshield, across the island, empty. No footsteps leading away on the gravel, no shape moving toward the store or the woods. Just the green-lit pumps and the shadows beyond. I figured she'd walked around the front while I was turned, maybe headed inside to ask someone else. Didn't think much more about it. Eased the clutch out and rolled forward slow, tires crunching, turning toward the exit. That's when I checked the driver's mirror again. She was standing exactly where she'd been, right at the edge of the island, head turned toward me, watching. Same place, same stance, wet hair dripping, like she hadn't moved at all. I felt the cold hit my stomach hard, kept my speed steady, eyes forward, but couldn't help glancing in the mirror every few seconds as I pulled onto the highway. She stayed there, small figure under the buzzing lights, until the curve took the lot out of sight. The road climbed steady toward Soco Gap, dark and empty. I turned the radio on for company, old country station fading in and out between the ridges. Tried to put her out of my mind. Told myself I'd imagine the mirror thing, tricks of tired eyes and bad light, happens on long nights. But the feeling wouldn't leave. The that pale skin, those dark eyes, the way she hadn't reacted when I said no. I kept thinking about her barefoot on sharp gravel, dress soaked through like she'd walked out of a creek somewhere up in the woods. No car in the lot that could have been hers. No reason for anyone to be wandering wet and alone at 2 a.m. I made myself stop at the big travel center just past the gap. Bright lights, security cameras, other trucks around. Needed coffee anyway. Inside, the night attendant was a kid in his 20s, half asleep behind the counter. I paid for the fuel and, after a minute, asked casual, "You got cameras on the pumps at that little hilltop place down the road?" He looked up, shrugged. "Yeah, owner's got a system. Why?" "Stopped there earlier. Thought I saw somebody hanging around the island. Just checking if everything was okay." He frowned, pulled up something on the computer under the counter. Grainy black and white feed, time-stamped about the time I'd been there. He scrolled back. "There," I said, right when I pulled in. He stopped it, leaned closer. The screen showed my truck nosed up to the pump, me climbing out and starting the fuel. Island lit harsh under the fluorescence, empty otherwise. No woman walking up, no figure standing at the edge. Just me moving around the truck, pumping diesel, climbing back in. The whole time, empty island. He ran it forward slow. Still nothing. No one approached, no one walked away. Just the truck idling, then pulling out alone. "Must have been a glitch," he said, but he didn't sound convinced. I didn't sleep much the rest of that run. Parked at the next big lot with plenty of company and left the cab lights on low. Still see her sometimes when I close my eyes, standing barefoot under those buzzing lights, wet hair dripping, dark eyes watching. I looked up the hilltop later. Place has been there since the 70s, built on land that used to have a little motel beside a creek. Motel burned down years ago. One night in summer, guests all asleep. Fire started fast. Electrical, they said. Only one survivor pulled out, a woman badly burned. Never found anyone else. I don't stop there anymore. Take the extra miles to the chain places when I'm running that stretch. But some nights, rolling past the dark exit on 19, I'll catch myself watching the mirrors longer than I should. Waiting for a small figure to appear under the green lights. Still standing, still watching.
I've parked in some out-of-the-way places over the years. Rest areas, empty lots behind warehouses, wide spots on back roads where the only light comes from your own markers. But there's one woodlot in southern West Virginia I'll never forget. It sits off a county road outside Beckley, a big cleared patch surrounded by national forest, used by loggers to stage loads before they haul them to the mill. Gravel base, room for half a dozen rigs if you park careful. No lights, no facilities, just the woods pressing in close. Truckers call it the Pine Lot. I'd stopped there a few times before when I was running timber or coal out of the hollers. Quiet, private, and nobody bothers you. You pull in, shut down, sleep till you're legal again. It was the middle of July 2010, one of those nights where the heat hangs heavy even after midnight. I'd picked up a load of hardwood down near Princeton that afternoon and was headed north toward I-79, figuring to make Charleston by morning. The day had been brutal, sun beating on the cab all the way up the grades, AC struggling to keep up. By the time I hit the Pine Lot around 11:30, I was wrung out. No other trucks there, just me and the crickets screaming in the trees. Moon was waxing, bright enough to see the stacks of cut logs along the far edge, silver in the light. I backed the trailer in against the tree line, set the brakes, and killed the engine. The sudden quiet felt good after hours of diesel rumble. The air inside the cab was still warm, thick with the smell of sawdust that always clings to a woodload. I opened both windows wide, hoping for a breeze that never came, and climbed into the sleeper with a bottle of water. Didn't even change, just kicked off my boots and lay back on the bunk in my jeans and t-shirt, fan running off the inverter, blowing lukewarm air across my face. I figured I'd be asleep quick. Long day, longer one tomorrow. I don't know how long I drifted before the first knocks woke me. Soft at first, metal on metal, deliberate, coming from underneath the trailer. 3 slow taps, pause, 3 more, like someone testing the frame with a knuckle or a small tool. I lay there in the dark, eyes open, listening. Told myself it was a branch settling, or maybe a coon climbing the landing gear looking for crumbs. Happens sometimes in places like this. The knock stopped after the second set. Crickets kept going outside, loud and steady. I closed my eyes again. Maybe 20 minutes later they started up. Same rhythm, same spot. 3 knocks, pause, 3 more. A little louder this time, close enough that I felt the faint vibration through the mattress. I sat up slow, heart already picking up speed. Grabbed the big mag light from the clip beside the bunk and eased the curtain back. Moonlight poured in, washing everything pale. I cracked the door quiet, stepped down onto the gravel in my socks, and walked the length of the truck with the light aimed under the frame. Nothing.
Brakes clean, airlines hanging straight, no leaves caught in the wheels. I crouched and shone the beam along the underside. Mud flaps, axles, the long I-beams of the trailer. Dust and road grime, but no movement. No eyes reflecting back. Just the smell of hot metal cooling and the faint scent of pine sap drifting down from the load. I stood there a minute longer, listening. Crickets, tree frogs, distant owl somewhere deep in the woods. No knocks. I climbed back in, locked the door out of habit, and settled onto the bunk again. Told myself it was nothing. Animals do strange things at night. I'd scared whatever it was away. The knocking started almost immediately. 3 slow, 3 more. Same as before, but closer now, toward the rear axles. I didn't get up this time, just lay rigid, staring at the ceiling, counting the pauses. It went on like that for an hour, maybe more. Every 10 or 15 minutes, 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks. Never faster, never random. Always the same deliberate rhythm, moving a little each time. First near the back, then forward along the frame, then toward the kingpin. Like whatever was doing it was walking the length underneath, testing different spots. I tried to ignore it at first, pulled the pillow over my head, turned the fan louder. Didn't help. The sound carried clear through the thin aluminum floor, dull, metallic, patient. After a while, my skin started crawling, that cold itch you get when you know you're not alone. I thought about starting the engine and leaving, finding another spot further up the road, but I was hours from anywhere decent, and the lot was flat and safe. Didn't want to risk driving tired on those curves. Around 1 o'clock, or whenever the moon was highest, the knocks came from directly under the sleeper. 3 hard ones. Pause. 3 more. Close enough that the whole bunk vibrated. I sat up fast, sweat breaking fresh despite the heat. Grabbed the light again and went out a second time. Walked the full circle, shining underneath from every angle. Still nothing. No footprints in the gravel. No disturbed dust on the frame. I even tapped the beams myself with the flashlight butt. Same dull ring. Whatever was making the sound knew how to hide. Back inside, I left the dome light on low and sat on the edge of the bunk, listening. The knocking had stopped while I was outside, but I knew it would start again. And it did, 5 minutes later. Softer now, almost polite. 3 knocks, pause, 3 more, right under my feet. I don't know what made me speak. Tiredness, frustration, maybe something deeper. I leaned down toward the floor and said, quiet but clear, "What do you want?" The silence that followed felt thicker than the heat. Crickets outside seemed to hush a little. Even the fan noise faded in my ears. I waited, breath held. Then 3 knocks, hard, right beneath the bunk. So strong the whole truck rocked on its suspension, springs creaking loud in the quiet. I jumped back, heart slamming against my ribs, grabbed my boots, yanked them on without lacing, and climbed into the driver's seat. Key in, engine catching with a roar that drowned everything else. I didn't bother with the walk around, just released the brakes, flipped on the lights, and eased out of the lot fast as the gravel allowed. Headlights got through the pines, showing empty road ahead. I drove till the sky started going gray in the east, found a wide pull-off on the highway with other trucks parked, and shut down there instead. Slept a couple hours with the doors locked and the curtain pulled tight. Next morning, after coffee and sunlight burned some of the fear off, I walked the length of the trailer slow, checked the underside careful, shining the light into every shadow. That's when I saw them, handprints. Small ones, narrow fingers, smeared in dark road dust and grease. Dozens of them along the bottom flanges of the frame, spaced like someone had been gripping hard while walking underneath. Some fresh enough the edges were still sharp. They ran the full length, from the rear bumper almost to the kingpin. Palm prints clear, fingers sprayed for grip. Child-sized maybe, or a small woman's, but strong enough to leave marks in the grime. I stood there staring a long time. No prints on the ground leading in or out. No disturbance in the gravel where I'd parked. Just those hands clinging to the underside like someone, or something, had been holding on all night. I cleaned the frame best I could at the next truck wash, high-pressure wand blasting the dirt away. Prints came off easy, but the memory didn't. I still run timber and coal through those hollers when the loads come, still park in remote spots when I have to, but I never went back to the pine lot. And on hot July nights when the crickets are loud and the moon is bright, I'll wake sudden in the sleeper with my heart racing, listening for 3 slow knocks underneath. Pause. 3 more.
I've been running produce out of Charleston, West Virginia for the better part of 20 years. Pallets of apples in fall, tomatoes and peppers in summer, whatever the warehouses load onto the reefer. It's steady work, pays the bills, and the mountain routes are prettier than the interstates if you don't mind the curves. I know every switchback on 52 and 19, every wide spot where you can pull a 53-footer over without scraping the guardrail. Or I thought I did. This particular run was early August 2016, One of those evenings where the sun hangs low and red over the ridges, turning the whole valley orange before it drops. I'd loaded up at the co-op just outside Charleston around 5, 40,000 pounds of sweet corn and melons headed for a distribution center in Pittsburgh. Dispatcher wanted it there by noon the next day, so I figured to roll straight through the night. Took the back way north on 19 through Summersville and over toward Richwood. Quieter roads, less traffic, and the reefer would keep the load cold. Dusk settled as I cleared the city limits, sky going purple behind me, headlights picking out the first deer on the shoulders. I noticed the car maybe 20 minutes out, just as the road started climbing into the real hills. Old Chevy Impala, late 60s or early 70s model, primer gray with patches of rust eating through the fenders. Headlights a little dim, one slightly higher than the other like the frame was bent. It settled in behind me 3 car lengths back, close enough to see, far enough to be polite. I didn't think much of it at first. Lots of locals run those old boats on the back roads, and tailing a truck can save fuel on the grades. The miles rolled by. I kept a steady 60 where the road allowed, downshifting smooth on the climbs. Radio playing low, some classic country station fading in and out between the ridges. Every time I checked the mirrors, the Impala was still there. Same distance, same speed. Didn't gain, didn't fall back. After an hour, I started paying closer attention. We'd gone through a couple small towns, past gas stations and pull-offs where a follower would normally turn or stop. It didn't. I sped up a little on a long straight, 65, 68. The Impala matched me easy, closing the gap just enough to keep pace. Eased back down to 55 on a curve. It slowed too, falling back to that same 3 lengths. Like the driver was hooked to my throttle. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe some kid playing games, or an old-timer drafting to save gas. But the prickle started on the back of my neck, the one you get when the quiet feels too deliberate. Around 10 o'clock I saw a wide gravel pull-off coming up, one of those old scenic overlooks with a stone wall and a view down into the Golly River Gorge. Figured I'd let him by. I flipped the blinker, eased over and rolled to a stop with the hazards blinking. Sat there idling, watching, the mirrors. The Impala slowed, turned in behind me maybe 50 yards back, and killed its lights. Engine noise died away. Just the faint tick of cooling metal carrying on the night air. No door opened. No silhouette got out to stretch or smoke. Just sat there, dark and quiet. I waited 5 minutes, sipping coffee gone cold, watching. Nothing moved. I grabbed the CV mic, keyed it a couple times. Northbound reefer on 19. You on my donkey, driver? You need anything? Static. Then distant chatter from boys way up on I-79, but nothing close. No answer. I eased back onto the road slow, checking the mirrors. The second I straightened out, the Impala's lights came on. Dim at first, then full, and it pulled out behind me again. Same 3 lengths, same steady pace. That's when the unease really took hold. I'd given him every chance to pass, to stop, to do anything normal. Instead, he just waited, patient as stone, then picked up the follow again. The road narrowed after that, twisting through cuts in the ridge where the mountains lean close on both sides. Fog started drifting in patches from the river below, thin at first, then thicker in the low spots. I flipped on the fog lights, yellow beams cutting the gray. The Impala stayed right there, a dark shape floating in the mist behind me. I pulled over once more around midnight, this time a flat spot beside an old closed motel, weeds growing through the parking lot. Same routine. Hazards, stop, wait. The Impala pulled in behind, lights off, engine off, sat silent. I waited longer this time, 10 minutes, 15, still no movement. I thought about getting out, walking back to see what the deal was, but something stopped me, that cold feeling in the gut that says don't push it. I pulled out again instead. Lights came on behind me, followed. The night wore on, hours blurred together, curves, climbs, straight stretches where the fog lifted and the stars came out sharp overhead. Every check of the mirrors showed the same thing, that beat-up Impala hanging back steady. I tried the CB again on different channels, asking if anybody had eyes on a gray Chevy running dark. Got a couple laughs, one guy saying maybe it was the ghost car folks talk about up near Cranberry Glades. I didn't laugh back. Around 4 in the morning, the sky started going pale in the east, first light glow filtering through the trees. I was coming down a long grade toward Richwood, road straightening out into a valley where the sun would hit first. I felt the night loosening its grip a little, tension easing from my shoulders. Checked the mirrors one more time, half expecting the usual. The road behind me was empty. Blacktop stretching back into the fog, no taillights, no shape in the mist, just the faint glow of dawn on the ridges. I slowed, almost stopped, staring hard. Nothing, no engine sound fading, no dust trail where it turned off. Gone. I pulled into the truck stop outside Richwood as the sun cleared the mountains. Bright light, other rigs fueling, people moving around. Felt like coming up from underwater. I parked, stretched, and finally breathed easy. Figured the driver had turned off somewhere while I wasn't looking, or maybe pulled over to sleep. Long night playing tricks on tired eyes. It wasn't until I got to Pittsburgh and dropped the load that I remembered the bass cam, little thing I'd mounted a year earlier after a wreck that wasn't my fault. Insurance reasons. I pulled the card when I parked for the night, plugged it into my laptop out of curiosity. The footage rang clear from dusk to dawn.
Every frame showed the highway ahead, timestamp steady, and in the little picture-in-picture from the rear camera, there it was. That beat-up Impala, 3 lengths back, mile after mile, following through every curve, every straight, every fog bank, pulling over when I did, lights off, waiting, pulling out again when I left, clear as day, right up to the last minutes before sunrise. Then in the final frame, just as the sun crested the ridge and the light hit full, the Impala was still there. Same distance, everything. Except the driver's seat was empty. No silhouette, no head against the headrest. Just the worn bench seat and the steering wheel turning gentle on its own as the car kept pace. I watched it 3 times, frame by frame. No edit, no glitch. Just that empty seat in the morning light. I still have the file saved on an old drive. Still run produce north out of Charleston when the loads come. But I take the interstate now, even when it adds hours. And on summer evenings when the sun sets red over the ridges, I keep the dash cam running. And I don't look in the mirrors as much as I used to.
I've been over the road long enough to know that dispatchers don't always tell you the whole story. They'll route you around wrecks, weather, scales, whatever gets the load there on time. Most times it's fine. Sometimes it's not. This one started out ordinary enough. Mid-July 2018, hauling a load of furniture blanks north out of Wytheville, Virginia, headed for a warehouse in Beckley. I was running Highway 52, that winding 2-lane that cuts through the Jefferson National Forest, when my Qualcomm beeped with a detour message. Rock slide blocking both lanes just south of Kimball, it said. Take Forest Service Road 826 east for 12 miles, rejoin 52 north of the slide. Estimated delay, 20 minutes. I'd taken side roads before. Paved Forest Service routes are usually decent, striped even, just narrow and dark. Figured it'd be quicker than sitting in a backup. I made the turn onto 826 without much thought. The road started out like they said, smooth blacktop, fresh reflectors on the curves, trees tall and close on both sides. Moon was nearly full, silver light filtering down through the leaves, enough to see without high beams most places. No other traffic, just me and the low rumble of the diesel, reefer humming steady behind. Smell of warm pine drifted in through the cracked windows. I settled in, set the cruise where I could, and watched the miles click off. Odometer said 12 to go. Easy. 10 minutes in, the reflectors started getting sparse, then gone altogether. The pavement stayed good, but the stripes faded to ghosts, and the trees crowded closer, branches brushing the mirrors every tight curve. I didn't worry much. Forest Service roads do that deeper in. Cell signal dropped to nothing, which wasn't unusual. I kept driving, figuring the junction would show up soon. 20 minutes passed, then 30. No turns, no clearings, no mile markers, just the same narrow road winding gentle through thick woods. The fuel gauge caught my eye, dropping faster than it should. I'd filled up in Wytheville, 3/4 of a tank easy, enough for the whole run with margin. But the needle was already past half, moving steady downward. I frowned, tapped the glass. Gauge wasn't stuck, just burning fuel like I was climbing grades nonstop. Except the road was mostly level, rolling mild through the hills. An hour in, I started getting uneasy. Odometer showed 40 miles since the turn, way past the 12 dispatch promised. No junction, no signs, nothing but endless trees sliding past the headlights. Fog began drifting across in patches, thin at first and thicker in the low spots. I slowed to 50, then 40, watching close for deer. The woods felt heavier now, quiet in a way that presses on your ears. Crickets were loud at the start. Now I couldn't hear them over the engine, just the tires on pavement and my own breathing in the cab. I was thinking about turning around, find a wide spot, backtrack till I hit 52 again, when I saw headlights ahead, faint at first and stronger, coming toward me through the fog. Another truck. Relief hit me hard. I eased right as far as the shoulder allowed, flashing my highs to signal. The oncoming rig did the same. Big conventional, dark blue Peterbilt pulling a dry van. We met in a straight stretch just wide enough for 2 trucks to pass careful, and both rolled to a stop window to window, engines idling low. The driver was an older guy, 60 maybe, gray beard, ball cap pulled low. Looked like he hadn't slept in days. Eyes red, hands tight on the wheel even parked. He cranked his window down all the way. I did the same. "This the way back to 52 South?" he asked, voice rough, like he'd been yelling or hadn't used it in hours. I shook my head. "I'm headed north. Took this detour around a rock slide. Supposed to be 12 miles. He stared at me a long second, then looked down at his own dash like he was checking something. "Rock slide," he repeated slow. "Dispatch sent me this way too. Said 20 minutes. I've been on this road 3 hours trying to get south." The words hung heavy between us. Fog drifted across the headlights, turning everything soft and gray. I felt the cold start in my stomach. "You see any junction?" I asked. He shook his head. "Nothing. No turns, no signs. Fuel gauge going down like I'm pulling a mountain. GPS quit an hour ago, just spinning circle." I glanced at my own screen. Same thing. Blue dot frozen, searching. We sat there a minute, engines rumbling, watching each other. Then, without saying much, we both knew what to do. He nodded once, I nodded back. We turned around careful, me first, him following close, and started back the way we'd come.
Side by side where the road allowed, single file on the curves. His headlights steady in their mirrors, a comfort after the long alone. We drove slow, watching for any sign we'd missed, any wide spot that might lead out. Miles clicked off again. 10, 20. The fog thickened, swallowing the shoulders, making the trees disappear into gray. My fuel needle kept dropping, quarter tank now, though I hadn't climbed anything steep. His Peterbilt stayed right there, matching speed, never falling back. Every few minutes he'd flash his lights once, like checking I was still ahead. I'd flash back. We talked a little on the CB, channel 19, clear for once. You see anything strange back there? He asked. Just the road, I said. Same trees, same curves. Me too, like it's looping. I didn't answer right away. Didn't want to say it out loud. Another 30 minutes, 40. The woods never changed. Same tall pines, same underbrush, thick as a wall. No clearings, no power lines crossing overhead. Nothing to mark progress. My tank hit empty warming, orange light glowing steady. His voice came over the radio again, quieter. Running on fumes here, I said. We kept going. Had to. Turning around again felt worse somehow. The fog lifted sudden just before dawn. Gray light filtering through the trees, sky going pale above the canopy. I felt the night loosening, tension easing a little. The road widened unexpected into a straight stretch, and there it was ahead. Highway 52, clear as day. No cones, no slide, no crews working. Just smooth blacktop stretching north and south, morning sun glinting off a fresh baited stripe. I pulled out slow, stopped on the shoulder, hazards blinking. Looked in the mirrors for the Peterbilt. Empty road behind me. No headlights fading in the fog. No engine sound carrying. Just the junction I turned off hours earlier. Trees crowding close. Forest Service road sign half hidden in the weeds. I sat there a long minute, staring, then eased onto 52 North. Drove till I hit the truck stop outside Welch. Fueled up. Tank took almost everything I'd started with, like I'd driven hundreds of miles instead of dozens. I asked around quiet. Other drivers, the counter girl, even a state trooper getting coffee. Nobody heard of a rock slide on 52 that night. Road was clear both directions. No reports, no calls. I still run north out of Wytheville sometimes. Still take 52 when it's open. But when dispatch sends a detour message now, I wait it out on the interstate. Cost time, cost fuel. Some nights rolling past that Forest Service turnoff in the dark, I'll catch myself watching the mirrors longer than I should, waiting for a dark blue Peterbilt to appear behind me. Headlights sturdy, keeping pace.
I've hauled coal out of Harlan County, Kentucky, more times than I can count. Black diamonds, they call it, though it's mostly just dust and danger once you're down in the holes. The money's good if you run independent, so I stuck with it for years, pulling a dump trailer up those narrow mountain roads to the Tipples, then loaded heavy back down the grades to the rail yard in Cumberland Gap. You learn quick how to handle a loaded rig on those descents. Downshift early, ride the service brakes gentle, and use the Jake brake to keep the speed in check without cooking the linings. That low, throaty rumble of the Jake becomes second nature, almost comforting after a while, like the mountain itself growling along with you. It was late July 2008, one of the hottest nights I remember. No breeze at all, just thick, still air hanging over the hollers like a wet blanket. I'd loaded out at a little independent mine up near Everett's, 40 tons clean, tarp tight, and was running it down to the yard before dawn. Took the old route over Black Mountain, the one the big companies avoid because the grade's so steep and the curves so tight. Locals call it the Devil's Drop. I knew it by heart. Every switchback, every spot where the guardrail's missing, and it's a straight fall into the pines below. Moon was full, bright enough to light the road silver between the trees, but the fog rose thick from the creeks down in the valleys, drifting across the blacktop in slow waves. I crested the top around midnight, shifted down smooth, and let the rig roll into the descent. Speed built quick, heavy pushing, and I flipped the Jake on low. That familiar deep rumble kicked in, vibrating through the seat and the steering wheel, echoing off the rock cuts on the inside of the curves. I settled back, one hand loose on the wheel, letting the engine do the work. Quiet night otherwise. No other trucks, no four-wheelers foolish enough to run it this late. Just the Jake and the tires singing on the pavement. The whisper started so faint I thought it was road noise at first, wind whistling through a loose mirror, or maybe a tarp strap flapping. Soft voices mixed in with the rumble, rising and falling like they were riding the exhaust note. Couldn't make out words, just a low murmur, almost human. I turned the radio off to listen better. Nothing but static anyway, this deep in the mountains. The sound kept going, woven tight into the Jake brake growl. I let off the switch for a second to coast, testing. Silence rushed in, just the wind and the tires. Flipped it back on. The rumble returned, and so did the whispers, a little clearer now. I told myself it was imagination. Long day underground, watching the load, heat making me fuzzy. Happens sometimes when you're tired and alone. Kept descending, curves coming steady, fog thicker in the low spots. The voices stayed with the Jake, never when I coasted, always when the engine braked.
After a few miles, I could pick out a rhythm to them, like someone talking slow and deliberate right into the stacks. Still no words I could catch, just that soft rise and fall. Halfway down the grade, the road straightens for a stretch, maybe half a mile before it hairpins again. I downshifted early, Jake rumbling hard to scrub speed. That's when the first word came clear through the noise. My name. My full name, the one nobody uses anymore since I dropped the junior after my daddy passed. Spoken soft, almost affectionate, like someone who'd known me all my life. Over and over, ride in that deep growl. I felt it in my chest more than heard it with my ears. I let off the Jake quick, heart starting to thump. Coasted silent for a bit, fog swirling past the headlights. Checked the mirrors, empty road behind, just moonlight on the blacktop. Flipped the switch again to slow for the coming curve. The rumble kicked in, and the voice came right back. My name, steady, patient, louder now, like whoever it was had moved closer. The cold started then, crawling up my arms despite the heat still trapped in the cab. I tried to laugh it off, exhaust leak maybe, sound bouncing weird off the rock walls. But the grade was too steep to coast the whole way. I needed the Jake to keep from riding the brakes into a fire, so I left it on, gripping the wheel tighter, watching the tack and the speedo close. The whispers changed as I dropped lower into the holler. Still my name at first, then other things, names and words only I would know. My ex-wife's maiden name, the one she hated and never told anybody after we split. The name of the old hound I buried behind the barn when I was 12. Bullet, black and tan coonhound that followed me everywhere till distemper took him. Spoken soft, almost fond, like someone reminiscing right there in the cab with me. I pulled over at the first wide spot I could find, a gravel turnout just above the final switchback, moonlit and empty. Killed the engine quick, sat listening to the ticks and pops of cooling metal, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Got out slow, boots loud on the gravel, and walked the full circle around the rig. Shone the flashlight under the frame, along the exhaust stacks, up into the engine bay from the side. Nothing. No loose parts rattling, no branches caught in the pipes, no sign anyone had tampered. Just the smell of hot brakes and diesel hanging heavy in the still air. Climbed back in, locked the doors out of habit, though it felt foolish on an empty mountain road. Didn't start up right away, just sat there, windows cracked, listening to the night settle. Crickets down in the trees, distant dog barking way off in some holler. No voices now that the engine was off. I couldn't coast the rest of the grade, not with 40 tons pushing, had to use the Jake some. So I eased back onto the road, shifting gentle, flipping the switch only when I had to. Every time the rumble ticked in, the whispers returned, fainter now, almost sad. Naming things from deeper back, the creek where I learned to swim, the teacher who caught me skipping school, the lie I told my mama the night my brother wrecked the truck, private things, buried things, spoken like gentle reminders. By the bottom of the hill, where the road finally flattens into Harlan, the voices faded with the last curve. I rolled into town on momentum alone, Jake off, service brakes cool enough to use. Delivered the load at the yard just after dawn, signed the tickets without saying much to the scale man. I've run coal out of those mines plenty since, still take the same routes when the pay's right. But I never descend Black Mountain after dark anymore. Take the long way around on the parkway, even if it adds hours. Costs me time, costs me fuel. Some nights when the air's still and the moon is full over the ridges, I'll hear that low rumble in my head long after the engine's off, and a soft voice riding it, patient as ever, saying my name, waiting for me to come down the grade again,